Everybody, I'm back for another edition of talking to other filmmakers about their first experiences making their first film. And the reason we're doing this is to kind of give people who are thinking about making their first film or are in the process of it or in the middle of it, anything along that spectrum, kind of ideas of what it's like. And the best ways sometimes to learn is from hearing how what others experienced and what they may change about that experience. So basically, I'm asking this question to fellow filmmakers: is if you could go back and remake the first film you ever did, what would you do differently? So on today's episode, we have David Zellis. I'm pronouncing that correctly, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, good. So David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, that's basically the first question is the main question. If you could go back, well, first of all, let's start out with what was your first film? Let's start there.
I'm not going to talk about what I could do with my first film. We'll talk about my first feature, but my
Okay.
first because I the short films I made previous to that, I don't really have anything. I don't know if I would have changed anything. Maybe not finished them on film for those films. That was quite the process back then, about 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, the shorts were kind of like my first films that I made. They're out there in the world, I think, on some fast channels and stuff like that these days. So I'll just plug those ones. Wacky horror movies called Demons of Bars and Tone and Cannibalism, a New Taste and Style. But those were my first films. But getting back to your question, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, is what would I do differently with my first, and we'll talk about my first feature film that I made.
Yeah, you're right. I should have specified that. This is
That's fine.
focusing on people who want to thinking about making their first feature or in the
Mhm.
process. So talking to filmmakers like you about your first feature film, if you
Sure.
could go back with all your wisdom now. So tell us first what your first feature film was, what with the name of it, what it was
Okay.
about, and then we'll jump into what you would do differently, knowing what you know now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to talk about my short films. I had a lot of fun making them, but we get into feature film making world, it's a lot different. I go to an IMDb to remember what the movie is about. Um, but my first movie, I was credited and as a co-writer and a producer, is a horror film called. And as I'm going on to IMDb, it's showing an ad for Fast X. That's not my first film, just to clarify.
Really? Oh,
No, I
that would have
know
been a good one.
it's a masterpiece, clearly. But no, my first film is a 2015 film called Dark Forest. It is a slasher film in the vein of Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Kind of like also a bit like Sleeping with the Enemy. So there's like a domestic abuse kind of storyline that goes in it. Very simple. It's about four girls that go on a camping trip and then they're stalked by a killer, right?
Right.
And I don't know if you get that angry honking in the background. I apologize. Uh, Apparently not a
Always good
fan.
to angry honking.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I live close to like a very busy street, so I apologize for the background noise. But yeah, so it was called Dark Forest. Again, I was credited as the co-writer and the producer. Um, if I could go back and change anything, if I could change anything, and then I'll talk a bit about, I think some of the good experiences I had, which I think is good to
Okay.
touch on as well. But if I could change anything, it would certainly be, I think, spending more time with the script.
Uh,
Um, I think people have seen it, and some people have really enjoyed it, and some people don't have that high of opinion on it. That's fine. Teach their own,
definitely.
obviously. Each their own, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I think if I could change anything, it's have more time on the script. I think kind of to give you a bit of background on this, because I'm here in Canada and the kind of system here is a bit different because we do have government funding and government financing, and that comes with its own sets of issues as well too. But here in Canada, so we first started the group of filmmakers I was working with to make this. We started making this, talking about this in 2012. Uh, and at the time, there was So let's go turn the volume down here a bit and getting a bit of feedback. There was a competition called Cinecoup, Cincoup, and the best way to describe it is like American Idol for filmmakers.
Okay.
Uh, and basically what it was is anyone could enter. I don't know if you have to pay a registration fee. I'm not clear, but you would create like the marketing materials for the movie before you would go out and make the movie. And so Dark Forest was our entry. We worked with the team that we had. It was four of us, and we didn't get very far in that competition. Suffice to
Was
say, yeah, go ahead.
was Katy Perry and Lionel Richie judging that?
No, like
They
people
weren't.
that worked in the Canadian film industry that are kind of probably not known outside of a very insular industry here. So
Okay.
if Katy Perry and Lionel Richie were judging it, it'd be a different experience, I'm sure.
So as
Uh,
American Idol-ish, but wasn't
yeah,
exactly the players in American Idol. I get it now.
yeah, exactly. It was. I mean, it's the best. It's the best way I can describe it. So, like, somebody who doesn't know it, it's like American Idol, where you have competitions.
Right.
So you would submit this online, and then like whoever was judging it would this determine. It was also kind of fan based, so you try to get
Okay.
people online to vote for you and stuff like that. Suffice to say, we didn't make it very far, but we decided to go ahead and make the movie anyways.
Okay.
We were very fortunate in that I want to say I'm trying. My memory's a bit foggy on this. I think, yeah, we put some of our own kind of cash into it, not much. Shot a percentage of the film in 2013, and then we had something to show. So then we ran a crowdfunding campaign, and we were able to shoot like the rest of it padded out. Basically, it's a short film. It's only 75 minutes. And then in 2015, it was done, and myself and the other filmmakers really pushed it hard to get it out there in the world. But yeah, just going back, I mean, that's kind of how it came to be. From the time the script was written to the time we were shooting, I wish we would have had kind of more time because in 2013 there was a script. I don't think we got around to shooting every page on that script. We wrote some more, I guess the other guy who was the writer director wrote more additional scenes in 2014 to kind of pad out the runtime. But again, yeah. So again, really, the big thing is just wishing we had more time to work on the script. The big component of the four female leads, and I think we were trying to draw inspiration from this movie called The Descent, which is British director Neil Jordan from like 2005, 2006, where it's like female leads and they all go splunking in a cave and then they get stalked by something in this cave. But
Okay.
the chemistry from the female leads is very good in that movie. I think the actors did a great job in this. So I think they did a good job as well too. But some of the dialogue, I listen to it, I cringe a bit. Some of
Yeah.
the plotting, it's like, okay, this, it's hard to make a movie, and it always never maybe turns out the way you want it to.
Right.
So there's that frustration of watching it back, and it's like, well, if spend some time in the script and really, wrote it down and figured out what works and what doesn't. That would be my biggest regret. I mean, maybe the budget wasn't great, so we couldn't do certain things. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But I'm grateful we had something we could do
Oh
something with.
yeah. Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a regret, but yeah, definitely a regret is just like taking time to figure out the story, which I think is so important. Even like low budget, micro budget films, because there's so many out there. But if you spend time with the script, making the best you can possibly be, more people are going to stick around and watch it, or be more engaged because the story is compelling. Because you spent time to figure out, how can I make this the best it can possibly be, even if it is
Yeah.
a slasher film where we've seen a lot of them, Killer in the Woods or whatever. Or make something that's unique or interesting, whatever that is. I think would that's my one regret. And not to knock the film, obviously I go out there and I sell it and I tell everyone to
Yeah.
watch it, of course, and we put it on Blu-ray, we put it on DVD. We were very fortunate to have a small theatrical run here in Canada, which is challenging to do. Back then, I mean, I think that's changed quite substantially these days. Um, what else did we do with it? I think, yeah, Blu-ray and DVD is obviously a big thing. It's on all the streaming platforms. We worked with a distributor. We kind of ended up taking it back to ourselves. That distributor was fine to work with, no issues there. You know, you hear a lot of horror stories. But yeah, we've been able to put on a lot of platforms, and it's like you can watch it everywhere basically. So you can watch it and form your own opinions if you like it
Right.
or love it, and write a review on Letterboxd or IMDb or whatever the case might be. And if you hate it, then
Yeah.
write
I
your
mean,
thoughts down
it's
too. That's fine too.
these are things are all subjective. I mean, you'll know
Yeah.
the biggest filmmakers in the world. Scorsese has said multiple times he would re-edit every film he ever made. You know, you
Mhm.
always go back and look, and we look at his films and say, why would you do that? That's perfect. But to him, you go back and you scrutinize little things and um,
Mhm.
story points or dialogue. So, kind of summing up what you were saying is that the script, uh, first time filmmakers, you're kind of saying, hey, put more time into that script. You're gonna be grateful you did, and then prep time, where it could
Yeah.
be maybe rehearsal, getting
Mhm.
everyone on the same page of how you want the dialogue, to be said, and everything. Work that out. You can hear when you do rehearsals like that, you can kind of hear what might be cringy dialogue and say, all right, we definitely want to change that kind of thing. So that's
Yeah.
very common, and I think that happens not only with first films, with a lot of filmmakers who just time sometimes is not your friend, and maybe if you can go back and say maybe I should work harder to make time my friend because it's going to be worth it to put in that prep time and give us that time where we can not rush into it and say, all right, we're filming now, even though, we may not be 100% crazy about every single thing. We're going to go ahead and do it. And you also don't want to procrastinate. Some people can procrastinate forever and keep putting it off. And, you're 90 years old and you still haven't made the film because you're still tinkering with that third act dialogue. So it's a kind of
Yeah.
it's a line that you have to figure out. But you do want that prep time. You do want that script to feel good for everybody, and you definitely want to feel good when you yell action that first time and everyone feels good about what they're doing. You
Yeah.
did
Absolutely.
say that you wanted
Mhm.
to also mention the good things, though,
Yeah.
about your first experience. So let's talk about that too, because there are definitely good experiences. You're going to learn a lot, and so yeah, tell me about
Mhm.
your good experiences.
Yeah. I mean, first of all the cast and crew are great. We owe them a lot for all the work they put into it. I think that was, great working with them. I mean, it was night shoots, and that's always very challenging.
Yeah.
Um, our friend Sophia, God bless her, I'm here in Canada, and I know you probably have a lot of viewers in the States, but I'm here in central Canada, and I'm in one of the coldest cities on Earth. I think we crack the top 10 every year. But we do have summers, just to clarify that. And so, I live in the city here, and then there's a lot of rural areas, and she was so generous to lend us out her farm, and we could shoot in, like, she had a forest behind her, like, farm, which was amazing. So I'll always be grateful for her. And it was just a place like an hour outside the city. So that was awesome. We got this old car that this guy who was like an old car guy gave us, and it's like what the car the girls drive around in the movie. So that was
Okay.
really cool, just in terms of the production wise and stuff like that. Everyone was game. I think that was pretty experience. And then, getting it, the whole, which I don't want to get into a rabbit hole, but here in Canada, the marketing is like sometimes non-existent, but we're not taught it, which I think is kind of an issue here. So I'm grateful for the whole Cinecoop process, even though we didn't win, we got a lot of experience that way, which I think was very helpful. And I've learned from people like yourself in the States that there is an effort you put into getting these movies out there and noticed because it's so competitive. So I'm grateful for that. I think that was a really good experience. And then when, it was half done and we did the crowdfunding, I think that was a good experience to, see how crowdfunding works and working with a team. That was very helpful for that aspect of things. And specifically, not asking for exorbitant amounts through the crowdfunding, I think was very helpful because we met our goal,
Okay.
which I think was just, yeah, incredibly helpful. And then when it was done, we took it to the American film market in 2014, which I'm sure you have probably attended because you were in Los Angeles.
Yeah, a few
Uh,
times.
it's a very eye-opening experience, very different than kind of the film events we have here in Canada. But I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to go down there. Didn't really sell it to anyone. Ended up doing the kind of theatrical here ourselves after that. And I think that I'm very grateful for that because that's what I'm doing now, and just learned a lot of, I made contacts and stuff like that, and kind of met some of the people that work in theatrical exhibition here in Canada. So very grateful for that. That was a great learning experience. And then, learning that even if you made a film in 2015, and I mean, it's almost 10 years since this film has been made, which is crazy to think about, or been released, I should say. 10 years since we first started shooting it. So there's that, but that,
Yeah,
so grateful for, learning that, a film can last a long time. It's really up to you as the rights holder of the movie to really like get the word out there, making sure on top of that and kind of stuff like that. So, and
absolutely.
I know it's different here in Canada just because the way the distribution works here is not always the greatest, let's just say.
Okay.
Um, just very briefly, and I'll keep this very brief, it's really based on there's financing for films through these government bodies, and it's all done through Heritage Canada, which would be through their culture minister, which is an elected official. And so sometimes the way the movies get made here is like based on, a member of parliament getting votes, which good and
Wow.
bad things to say about that, right? So, and to not get into that rabbit hole again. But I think we learned a bit more of a kind of an American way. And we did get some support from one of the government bodies, but it was a smaller amount. So, I mean, we had to do a few things, credit them and stuff like that. But the bigger the amount you get, the more kind of stipulations are going to put on that. And to say we're grateful for that funding body that they provided us that, amount of kind of cash to get us to a certain point to finish it. And yeah, I want to say just in terms of like, I was going to mention a name here, Craig Gabosh, who like did a lot of the shooting of the film and like edited the film. I think he's a big part of like getting it completed because it's a very talented individual. So
Okay. All right. Well, I think kind of, the overall message for any aspiring filmmakers is you're going to learn so much more if you actually do it.
yeah,
Thinking about
absolutely.
it, talking about it, you're going to actually do it. Mistakes will be made by everybody.
Mhm.
It's unavoidable, but those mistakes sometimes are only noticed by you. Don't be intimidated by those mistakes. You got to get out there, learn from them, apply that to your next films. But the best way to get started is to actually do. And what I with this series, I'm trying to get that across to people is, yeah, people who have now made several films, they are going to go back and say, yeah, oh, yeah, I wish I did this. I wish I did this. But ultimately, they wouldn't be where they're at now if they didn't do the actual film, the first one and the second one, to build to where they are now. So it's so important to get out there and do it, not be intimidated by the process. Um, I actually wrote a book about the making of my film. It was like very therapeutic for me, and I put in kind of what we've been discussing, all that went well and all that didn't go well. I put in the shooting script. I have notes about every scene. I've interviewed a bunch of our crew. I just put everything in there that I could think of that would have helped me as a first time filmmaker, just kind of giving an idea. Sometimes you don't know, you feel stupid, but sometimes you don't know what a certain crew member might do, and you want to try to get as much knowledge about everything you can before you start the process. And then, as you talked about, script and prep time and hiring and casting and working with people that you like working with. That's a big deal. Because if you
Absolutely.
don't, if there's stress and problems and that just makes a tough situation even more tough. So it's really going into it um, with as much preparation and thought as you can time wise, and then doing it. You got to get out and do it. Don't talk yourself out of doing it because you're worried of this or that or mistakes or that, whatever. That's not going to get anything done. So get out there and do it. So that's kind of what I hope got across with our conversation, that
Sure.
you had things that you would have done differently, but ultimately you're grateful you did it because it's
Mhm.
led to where you are now, and there were good experiences as well as the things that you wish you could have tweaked here or there. So
Yeah,
um
yeah. And I'd say I'm grateful that, it's hard to, I don't think it matters where you are. It's always hard to make a feature. And I'm grateful I've
yeah,
got that, it's out there in the
absolutely.
world. And
Yeah,
it's,
right.
uh, it's my baby. And maybe it's not a perfect baby, but I love it still the same.
Hey, there's as I was saying, Scorsese would say the same thing. His films that we admire, he would change so much about them. So we just don't know. It's all subjective. It's
Hmm.
someone may look at these things and say, I love that actor, I love that line, I love this, and you're always surprised. And then you have critics, and some people are just love hating things. So you can't really take it too personal. It's just
Yeah.
you got to go with your gut. You got to make the films you want to make, and then you keep doing it. And that's
I
kind of
do.
how.
I do love reading the nasty reviews on Letterboxd. They make me laugh. So
Yeah, I mean, people sit around, they watch something, and then a lot of them are just angry in life and just just want to, spew their vitriol. So you never know where someone's coming from or how real it is. It's all
yeah, yeah. And
subjective.
not to say that the reviews that may give it lower stars, some of them actually put thought in,
Yeah, I
justify
mean,
the reasons why, which is fine, right?
I've learned some things from reviews, and other things I've said, I could tell that that person is just angry and just spewing, and they're not going to like anything. They just want to spew because that's
Yeah,
maybe their
that's true.
hobby. So you just gotta you take what you can from the criticism, and if you can learn anything from it, wonderful. But don't let it
Hmm.
stop you.
Yeah,
Keep going
absolutely.
and keep doing. So to end off, tell us what you would like the world to know about what you're doing right now. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want people to know?
Yeah, sure. So, like we have a distribution company here in Canada, and we distribute Canadian films, Canadian produced films, which is very important to us. So it's just called Zelco Entertainment. I guess the one thing, and we take older Canadian films. So I think one thing we're proud of is some restorations we've done.
Okay.
And there's a film from 1973 called The Rainbow Boys, starring Donald Pleasance, of course, from Halloween. Um, and so we were able to team up with these other gentlemen here in Canada and the US as well, who live there, called Canadian International Pictures. And working with them, we have it on Blu-ray,
Okay.
uh,
Nice.
slipcover, so it's limited edition, but they're on the Vinegar Syndrome website. I think half of them are sold, so if you want to get your copy, please get it soon. If you especially feel like a Donald Pleasance fan, which there are a lot out there. So yeah, definitely just want to plug that, and hopefully doing some more restorations in the future. That film, The Rainbow Boys, is on construction's going on in the background. I apologize, but The Rainbow Boys is here in Canada on the Cineplex store, which is not in America. So Cineplex is like the large theater chain here in Canada. They have most of the screens. But then we'll eventually are working towards putting it on like Apple TV and some of the other platforms like that where you would buy or rent it. So yeah,
Okay. All right. And where can people find you and your work, social media and website, anything that you could tell us? And I'll also put it in the description box.
yeah, perfect. ZelcoEntertainment.com. That website might evolve, but yeah, that's the website address. So just ZelcoEntertainment.com. The short films I've made in the past in Dark Forest, they're there and where you can find to watch them and all that good stuff. And then yeah, I mean, you go there and you look up my name on IMDb, and you can see the various credits I have. And yeah, I don't know. I could list a lot of the films we rep, and I love them, and you should go watch them. And I'll just say another one because I do like it. One called Tapeworm because we're working on the filmmakers with other things, and it's kind of like a Jim Jarmusch Todd Solondz kind of film.
Okay.
It's very funny. It's very funny, and it's
All right.
on like Apple and Amazon Prime, and you can watch it there. All that good stuff.
Okay. And are you on social media anywhere people can follow you?
Yeah, I mean, personally, not so much. But if you want, you order company website, zelcoentertainment.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter or X, whatever you want to call
Whatever
it
it
these
is
days.
now, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
whatever it's called.
and everyone can find all those at your website. There's links to it from
Yeah,
there.
the links
Okay.
are just on our website. Yeah, you can just go there.
All right. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out to talk to me. And
Yeah,
I think
thank you.
filmmakers who are looking to do their first films are going to get a lot out of this
Good.
and realize, there's the good and the bad and to just get out there and do it. And that's what we want, people to take away from this is it's fun making films, challenging at times, but fun, and go out and do it. So
Yeah,
thank you,
for sure.
David. I appreciate it.